The challenge. Captain Zara Voss stared at the massive holographic display floating above the command center of the Terran vessel Defiant. The swirling nebula before them pulsed with dangerous energy, but it wasn't the cosmic phenomenon that made her stomach churn. It was the sleek, predatory ships emerging from its depths like metallic sharks sensing blood. "Scolari warships, Captain," reported Lieutenant Chen from the sensor station. His voice carried the barely controlled fear that had gripped the entire bridge crew. 12 heavy cruisers and what looks like their flagship, the Bloodclaw. The Scolari. Even their name sent shivers through the spines of every sentient species in the galaxy. For over 2,000 years, they had been the undisputed masters of warfare. Their military might was legendary, their tactics flawless, their technology generations ahead of everyone else. Entire civilizations had fallen before their crimson banners without firing a single shot in return. Humanity had only been part of the galactic community for 37 years. They were still considered newcomers, barely worthy of notice by the ancient powers that ruled the stars. The Terran Federation controlled a modest cluster of systems on the outer rim, far from the centers of galactic politics and power. They were miners, traders, and explorers, not warriors. At least that's what everyone believed. "They're hailing us, Captain," announced Communications Officer Rodriguez, her fingers dancing nervously over her console. The bridge fell silent, except for the soft hum of life support systems and the distant thrum of the ship's engines. "Put them through," Zara commanded, straightening her uniform jacket. She had faced pirates, hostile aliens, and cosmic disasters in her 15 years of service, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The main view screen shimmered and resolved into the fearsome visage of a Scolari war commander. The alien's reptilian features were enhanced with cybernetic implants that glowed with malevolent red light. Ritual scars covered his scaled face, each one representing a world conquered or an enemy fleet destroyed. His name was Thrakus the Worldbreaker, and his reputation preceded him across half the galaxy. "Human vessel," the Scolari commander spoke in accented but perfect standard galactic. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "You trespass in territory claimed by the Scolari Empire. Surrender your ship immediately, and your deaths will be swift." Zara felt the eyes of her crew upon her. These were good people, scientists, engineers, diplomats, heading to a peace conference on Rigel Prime. They didn't deserve to die because of a navigation error that had brought them into disputed space, but surrender meant certain death anyway. The Scolari were known for their cruelty, and they never left witnesses. "This is Captain Zara Voss of the Terran Federation vessel." "Defiant," she replied, her voice steady despite the racing of her heart. "We're on a diplomatic mission and pose no threat to your empire. We request safe passage through this sector." Thrakus's laugh was like the sound of metal grinding against stone. "Diplomatic mission? From the primitive humans? How amusing. Your species has been in space for less than a century. You know nothing of war, nothing of strength, nothing of the price of survival in this galaxy." The Scolari commander leaned forward in his command throne, his cybernetic eye focusing on Zara with predatory intensity. "But perhaps you can provide some entertainment before you die. I am curious about these humans who dare to venture into the deep void. I challenge you to single combat, Captain. Your ship against mine. If by some miracle you survive more than 5 minutes, I will grant your crew a warrior's death instead of the slow torture they deserve." Around the bridge, Zara's officers exchanged glances of barely concealed terror. The Defiant was an exploration vessel, lightly armed and designed for long-range missions. The Bloodclaw was a dreadnought that had personally destroyed over 400 enemy ships in its career. It was like challenging a grizzly bear to a fight with a house cat. But as Zara looked at the faces of her crew, she saw something else beneath their fear. There was determination there, and a spark of something that might have been hope. Humans had always been stubborn creatures, reluctant to give up even when logic demanded surrender. "Accepted," Zara said, and felt a collective intake of breath from her bridge crew. "But I have one condition of my own." Thrakis's scarred features twisted into what might have been amusement. "A condition? From prey to predator? This should be interesting. Speak." "When we win," Zara said, emphasizing the word when, with all the confidence she could muster, "you will withdraw your fleet from this entire sector and leave all human ships unmolested for the next 10 years. The Scolari commander's laughter echoed through the comm channel, and Zara could hear similar sounds from the background of his bridge. To them, the idea of humans defeating the most feared military force in the galaxy was beyond absurd. "When you win?" Thrakus repeated, wiping moisture from his cybernetic eye. "Oh, human, your delusions are magnificent. Very well, I accept your condition, knowing that it will never come to pass. Prepare your vessel for destruction, Captain Voss. You have 5 minutes to make peace with whatever gods your primitive species worships." The communication cut off, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Zara turned to face her crew, seeing fear and doubt warring with loyalty in their eyes. She knew what they were thinking. The Scolari had never lost a fleet engagement. Their tactics were studied in military academies across the galaxy as examples of perfect warfare. Their technology was so advanced that some species regarded it as indistinguishable from magic. "Captain," spoke up Commander Hayes, her first officer. His voice was carefully controlled, but she could hear the question underneath. "What are your orders?" Zara walked to the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities. The Defiant had some advantages that the Scolari might not expect. Human technology was newer, cruder in many ways, but it was also innovative. Humans had a reputation for finding unconventional solutions to impossible problems. They had to use that now. "Mr. Chen, full sensor sweep of the enemy formation," she commanded. "I want to know everything about those ships, power signatures, weapon systems, shield frequencies, even how many crew members they have on board." "Aye, Captain. Sensors are at maximum resolution." Chen's fingers flew over his console. "Captain, their power readings are incredible. The flagship alone has more firepower than our entire home fleet." "Mr. Torres," Zara called to her chief engineer, "I need you to reroute all non-essential power to our shields and weapons. Strip power from life support if you have to. We only need to survive for a few minutes." "Already on it, Captain," came the reply from the engineering station. "But our weapons won't even scratch their shields. Their defensive systems are at least 50 years ahead of ours." Zara nodded grimly. She had expected as much. In a straight fight, the Defiant would last exactly as long as it took the Scolari to target and fire their main weapons. But humans had never been known for fighting fair. "Ms. Rodriguez, open a channel to engineering. I need to speak with Dr. Kepler immediately." Dr. Sarah Kepler was the mission's chief scientist, a brilliant physicist who had been working on experimental energy theories that pushed the boundaries of known science. If anyone could find an edge in this impossible situation, it would be her. The view screen shifted to show the ship's main laboratory, where Dr. Kepler was frantically working at a bank of computers. Her graying hair was disheveled, and her lab coat was covered in coffee stains, but her eyes burned with the intensity of someone who had just made a breakthrough. "Captain, I've been monitoring the tactical situation," she said without preamble. "I think I know how we can win this." The bridge crew turned to stare at the view screen in disbelief. Win? Against the Scolari? The idea seemed impossible. "I'm listening, Doctor," Zara said carefully. "The Scolari ships are using quantum-locked shield harmonics," Kepler explained rapidly. "It's incredibly advanced technology, but it has one weakness. The shields operate on a fixed frequency that can't be changed during combat without shutting down the entire defensive grid. Commander Hayes frowned. But how does that help us? We don't have weapons that can penetrate those shields regardless of their frequency. Dr. Kepler's smile was almost predatory. No, but we have something better. The prototype quantum disruptor I've been working on. It was designed to study stellar phenomena, but I can modify it to create a resonance cascade in their shield frequency. It won't destroy their shields, but it will make them visible to our weapons for about 30 seconds. 30 seconds, Zara mused. Against 12 ships and a dreadnought. It would have to be perfect. There's more, Captain, Kepler continued. The nebula we're in is rich with exotic particles. If I can create a chain reaction using the disruptor, I might be able to turn the entire cloud into a weapon. The Scolari ships would be caught in a storm of charged plasma that would overwhelm their defensive systems. It was insane. It was desperate. It was the kind of plan that would get them all killed if it failed. But as Zara looked around the bridge at her crew, she saw something that surprised her. They weren't looking at her with fear anymore. They were looking at her with hope. Humans had always been gamblers at heart. They were the species that had looked up at the stars and decided to build rockets to reach them. They were the ones who had taken their first steps into the galaxy, knowing that they were weak and primitive compared to the powers that ruled there. But they had taken those steps anyway, because humans never backed down from a challenge. "Do it!" Zara commanded. "All hands prepare for combat. We're about to show the galaxy what humans are really made of." As the crew sprang into action around her, Zara felt a strange calm settle over her mind. In a few minutes, they would either be dead or they would have accomplished something that every military expert in the galaxy would say was impossible. Either way, they would face it as humans, stubborn, innovative, and utterly unwilling to surrender. The battle. The Defiant shuddered as Dr. Kepler's modified quantum disruptor came online. Deep in the ship's laboratory, exotic energies swirled through crystalline matrices that had never been designed for combat applications. The entire vessel hummed with barely contained power as every system was pushed beyond its safety limits. "Disruptor charging at 60%, Kepler's voice crackled over the intercom. "I need 2 more minutes to reach full power." On the main view screen, the Scolari fleet had formed into a perfect attack formation. Their ships moved with mechanical precision, each vessel taking its assigned position in a pattern that had been refined through countless battles. The Bloodclaw held position at the center, its massive hull bristling with weapon emplacements that could reduce a planet to molten slag. "Captain, they're beginning their attack run," Lieutenant Chen reported. His voice was steady now, the initial fear replaced by the focused calm that came with accepting one's fate. "All ships are powering weapons and moving to optimal firing positions." Zara watched the tactical display with the eye of someone who had studied Scolari battle tactics in the academy. Their approach was textbook perfect, a synchronized assault that would overwhelm their target's defenses through sheer firepower and precision timing. No enemy had ever survived their opening volley intact. "Time to disruptor readiness?" she asked. 90 seconds, Captain," came Kepler's reply. "But I'm detecting some instabilities in the quantum field. The exotic particles in this nebula are more reactive than I anticipated. That could be good or bad." Zara had learned long ago that in desperate situations, sometimes the unexpected was your only ally. "Continue charging, Doctor. We only get one shot at this." Commander Hayes moved closer to the captain's chair, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Captain, even if the disruptor works perfectly, we're still outnumbered 12-1. How do we use 30 seconds of vulnerability to destroy an entire fleet?" Zara's smile was grim but determined. "We don't fight them like Scolari, Commander. We fight them like humans." The view screen erupted in crimson light as the Scolari opened fire. Dozens of energy beams lanced through space, each one capable of vaporizing a lesser ship. The Defiant's shields flared to life, absorbing what damage they could while the ship's evasive systems threw it into a wild corkscrew pattern that would have made a seasoned pilot sick. "Shields down to 70%, Torres reported from engineering. "They're not even trying yet, Captain. That was just ranging fire." Zara gripped the arms of her chair as another volley shook the ship. The Scolari were toying with them, demonstrating their overwhelming superiority before delivering the killing blow. It was a psychological tactic designed to break enemy morale, and it had worked on countless species before. But humans had always been stubborn about accepting defeat. "Dr. Kepler, status report," Zara called out. 30 seconds to full charge. "Captain, I'm reading some very strange energy patterns in the nebula. The exotic matter here isn't just reactive, it's actively responding to quantum manipulation. I think this cloud might be some kind of dormant stellar nursery." That gave Zara an idea. A terrible, beautiful, utterly insane idea that just might work. "Doctor, what would happen if you overloaded the disruptor instead of using it for a targeted pulse?" There was a long pause before Kepler's voice returned, tinged with scientific excitement. "The quantum cascade would propagate through the entire nebula. Every exotic particle would become a potential energy source. Captain, the chain reaction could turn this entire region of space into into a star. A temporary star? Very temporary. Maybe 30 seconds before it collapses back into normal matter. But during that time, the energy output would be—" Kepler's voice trailed off as she ran calculations. "Captain, it would be like detonating a bomb the size of a small sun." Around the bridge, the crew exchanged glances of amazement and terror. They were talking about creating a stellar phenomenon that could be seen from halfway across the galaxy. The energy release would be beyond anything in recorded military history. It would also almost certainly destroy them along with the Scolari. "Survival probability for the Defiant?" Zara asked quietly. "If we're at the epicenter when the reaction begins, 0%. But if we could somehow get outside the immediate blast radius—" Kepler paused for more calculations. "Maybe 15%. The shockwave would still cripple most of our systems." 15%. Those weren't good odds by any reasonable measure. But humans had built their entire civilization on taking chances that other species considered suicidal. They had colonized worlds that should have killed them, built technologies that should have been impossible, and reached for stars that were impossibly far away. "Do it," Zara commanded. "Overload the disruptor and prepare for quantum cascade." "Captain!" Commander Hayes grabbed her arm. "That's essentially a suicide mission. We'll be creating a weapon of mass destruction in the middle of a diplomatic sector." Zara gently removed his hand from her arm. "Commander, in about 60 seconds, the Scolari are going to destroy this ship and everyone on it. Then they're going to continue their expansion into human space, and millions of people will die. This isn't just about us anymore." The ship bucked violently as another Scolari volley found its mark. This time, the enemy wasn't holding back. Energy beams designed to crack planetary crusts slammed into the Defiant's shields, overloading capacitors and causing system failures throughout the ship. "Shields down to 30%, Torres called out. "I'm reading multiple hull breaches on decks 7 and 8. Emergency containment fields are holding, but barely." "Time to cascade initiation?" Zara asked. 15 seconds, Kepler replied. "Captain, I need you to know. Once I trigger this, there's no stopping it. The reaction will propagate faster than light through subspace. Even if we change our minds, we can't abort." Zara looked around the bridge one last time. These people had trusted her with their lives. And now she was asking them to bet everything on a plan that would have been rejected by any sane military strategist. But as she met their eyes, she saw the same stubborn determination that had driven humanity to the stars. "All hands. This is the captain," she announced over the ship-wide intercom. We're about to attempt something that no one has ever tried before. We're going to create a star and use it as a weapon. Our chances of survival are minimal, but if we succeed, we'll save countless human lives and show the galaxy that humanity won't be conquered without a fight. She paused, feeling the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. I won't lie to you. We'll probably die in the next few minutes, but we'll die as humans, free, defiant, and absolutely refusing to surrender. All stations, prepare for quantum cascade initiation. Cascade ready, Captain, Kepler announced. Initiating in 3, 2, 1. The universe exploded. Deep within the exotic matter of the nebula, quantum fields that had remained stable for millions of years suddenly destabilized. Particles that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously collapsed into normal space-time, releasing energies that had been locked away since the formation of the galaxy. The chain reaction propagated outward at superluminal speeds, turning a cloud of cosmic dust into the heart of a newborn star. The Defiant was thrown forward by the initial shock wave like a leaf in a hurricane. Every system on the ship overloaded simultaneously as energies beyond human comprehension washed over the hull. Emergency lights flickered and died, replaced by the hellish glow of stellar fire streaming through the viewports. Through the chaos, Zara caught glimpses of the Scolari fleet. The perfect formation that had seemed so menacing moments before was now scattered like toys in a child's tantrum. Ships that had ruled the galaxy for 2,000 years tumbled helplessly through space as their advanced technology failed them in the face of forces they had never imagined. The Bloodclaw, pride of the Scolari Navy, spun end over end as its quantum-locked shields collapsed under the assault of raw stellar energy. For a brief moment, Zara saw Commander Thrakus on her view screen, his cybernetic eye wide with disbelief as his invincible dreadnought was reduced to a burning wreck. Then the shockwave hit the Defiant fully, and consciousness fled into blessed darkness. When the sensors cleared and the emergency power came back online, the nebula was gone. In its place was an expanding ring of superheated plasma that would glow in the visible spectrum for the next 1,000 years. At the center of the ring, where the Scolari fleet had been, there was nothing but empty space and scattered debris. The Defiant hung motionless in the void, her hull scarred and her systems barely functional. But she was alive, and so was her crew. Against all odds, against all logic, they had survived the birth of a star. The aftermath. 3 days after the battle, rescue ships from the Terran Federation found the Defiant drifting in the outer edges of the expanding plasma field. The exploration vessel was barely recognizable. Her hull was scorched black. Entire sections had been torn away by the stellar shockwave, and her engines were completely dead. But she was intact, and her crew was alive. Captain Zara Voss sat in the medical bay of the rescue ship Aurora, watching news feeds from across the galaxy on a portable display. The destruction of the Scolari fleet had sent shock waves through galactic civilization that were still rippling outward. For 2,000 years, the galaxy had operated under one simple assumption. The Scolari were invincible. That assumption had just been shattered by a species that most civilizations considered primitive newcomers. "Captain, you have a visitor," announced Dr. Martinez, the Aurora's chief medical officer. Despite his protests, Zara had been confined to the medical bay while her radiation exposure was monitored. The stellar energies that had destroyed the Scolari fleet had also bathed the Defiant in exotic particles that could have long-term effects on human physiology. The visitor was Ambassador Elena Vasquez, the Federation's chief diplomat and one of the most powerful people in human space. She was a small woman with silver hair and intelligent eyes, but Zara had seen her reduce alien dignitaries to stammering confusion with nothing but words and careful reasoning. "Captain Voss," the ambassador said, taking a seat beside the medical bed, I've just come from an emergency session of the Galactic Council. I thought you should know. Humanity has been formally invited to join the Council as a permanent member with full voting rights. Zara blinked in surprise. The Galactic Council was the governing body for all major spacefaring civilizations. Membership was typically reserved for species that had been in space for at least 500 years and controlled significant territory or resources. Humanity met neither of those criteria. "They're offering us a seat because they're afraid of us," Zara said quietly. Ambassador Vasquez nodded. "The footage of the battle has been analyzed by every military expert in the galaxy. Do you know what terrifies them most? It's not that you created a weapon capable of destroying an entire fleet. It's that you were willing to use it, even though it meant almost certain death for you and your crew." The ambassador activated a holographic display showing news feeds from across known space. Alien commentators spoke in hushed tones about the human factor that military strategists were now scrambling to understand. Several species had already requested formal military alliances with the Terran Federation. "The Zephyrians have offered us exclusive mining rights to 3 star systems in exchange for a mutual defense pact," Vasquez continued. "The Crystalline Collective wants to share their quantum computing technology with us. Even the Vorthan Empire, which hasn't spoken to anyone for 3 centuries, has sent diplomatic envoys asking for a meeting." Zara watched images of human ships being welcomed at space stations that had previously refused them docking privileges. The galaxy was looking at humanity with new eyes, seeing potential allies instead of primitive upstarts. "What about the Scolari?" she asked. "Completely demoralized," Vasquez replied with grim satisfaction. "The destruction of the Blood Claw and Thrakis's fleet has sent their entire military hierarchy into chaos. 3 of their sector commanders have declared independence, and 2 more have requested asylum with their traditional enemies. Their empire is collapsing faster than anyone thought possible." It made sense, Zara reflected. The Scolari had built their entire civilization on the idea that they were superior warriors destined to rule the galaxy. Having that fundamental belief shattered by a species they considered beneath notice would be psychologically devastating. "There's something else," the ambassador added, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Dr. Kepler's analysis of the battle data has revealed something extraordinary. The quantum cascade effect you created didn't just destroy the Scolari fleet. It actually created new exotic matter in the process. Matter with properties we've never seen before." Zara leaned forward, intrigued despite her exhaustion. "What kind of properties?" "The initial reports suggest it might be possible to create stable artificial gravity fields, or even faster-than-light communication networks. Dr. Kepler thinks you might have accidentally stumbled onto the key to technologies that could revolutionize galactic civilization." The irony was almost overwhelming. In trying to survive a desperate battle, they had potentially advanced human science by decades or centuries. The galaxy that had dismissed humanity as primitive newcomers was now begging to share in the knowledge they had gained through sheer stubborn determination. A soft chime indicated an incoming message on the ambassador's personal communicator. She listened for a moment, then smiled. "Captain, the Federation Council has just voted to promote you to Admiral and give you command of our new deep space exploration fleet. They want you to lead humanity's expansion into the galactic core." Admiral Zara Voss. It had a nice ring to it, though she wondered if she was ready for such responsibility. 3 days ago, she had been the captain of an exploration vessel on a routine diplomatic mission. Now she was apparently one of the most famous military commanders in galactic history. "There's one more thing," Ambassador Vasquez said, standing to leave. "The Galactic Council has established a new military doctrine because of your actions. They're calling it the Human Protocol. It's a set of guidelines for dealing with species that might be willing to use weapons of mass destruction in desperate situations." As the ambassador left, Zara turned back to the news feeds. The reports were already calling the battle the miracle of the Vortex Nebula and speculating about what other surprises humanity might have in store for the galaxy. She watched interviews with alien military experts who were trying to understand how a primitive species had managed to defeat the most advanced fleet in known space. They were missing the point, she realized. It wasn't about technology or superior tactics or even luck. It was about something much simpler and much more fundamental to human nature. Humans didn't know when to quit. Every other species in the galaxy had learned to calculate odds, to surrender when defeat was inevitable, to accept their limitations and work within them. But humans had evolved on a world that should have killed them a dozen times over. They had survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, plagues, and wars that should have driven them extinct. They had learned that sometimes the only way to survive was to do something so crazy that no rational being would attempt it. The Scolari had ruled the galaxy through fear and superior firepower, but they had never faced an enemy that was genuinely willing to die rather than surrender. They had never encountered a species that would turn a scientific instrument into a weapon of unimaginable destruction and use it even though it meant almost certain death. A soft knock on the medical bay door interrupted her thoughts. Dr. Kepler entered, carrying a tablet filled with scientific data and wearing the expression of someone who had just made a discovery that would change everything. "Admiral," the scientist said, apparently already aware of Zara's promotion, "I've finished my analysis of the quantum cascade effect. You need to see this." The tablet displayed a three-dimensional model of the exotic matter created during the battle. It pulsed with internal energies that seemed to follow patterns that human science had never observed before. This matter exists in a quantum superposition that allows it to interact with multiple dimensions simultaneously, Kepler explained. If we can learn to manipulate it, we could create technologies that make our current science look like stone tools. Instantaneous communication across galactic distances, manipulation of gravity on a planetary scale, even the possibility of accessing parallel dimensions. Zara studied the data, trying to understand the implications. "Doctor, are you telling me that our desperate gamble might have given humanity the keys to technologies beyond anything the galaxy has ever seen?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you, Admiral. The galaxy challenged us to a fight, and we didn't just win, we accidentally revolutionized the fundamental laws of physics in the process." Through the viewport of the medical bay, Zara could see the expanding plasma field where the battle had taken place. It glowed with the light of newborn stars, a permanent reminder that sometimes the most impossible victories came from the willingness to attempt the most impossible plans. The galaxy had thought they knew what humans were capable of. They had seen humanity as weak newcomers, suitable for mining asteroids and conducting peaceful trade missions. They had never imagined that when pushed to the brink of extinction, humans would respond by creating weapons that could reshape reality itself. Now the galaxy was learning what every human child discovered in their first history lesson. Never underestimate a species that climbed down from the trees, looked up at the stars, and decided that they belonged out there among them. The Scolari Empire was collapsing. The Galactic Council was offering humanity a permanent seat at the table of galactic power, and human scientists had just unlocked technologies that could change the fundamental nature of civilization itself. All because one human captain had refused to surrender when surrender was the only logical option. As Admiral Zara Voss prepared to take command of humanity's new deep space fleet, she couldn't help but smile. The galaxy had challenged them to a fight, and humanity had responded with their greatest weapon, the absolute refusal to accept defeat. The stars themselves would never be the same. More importantly, they had done the impossible. They had defeated the Scolari. The Scolari had ruled the galaxy through fear and superior firepower for 2 millennia. They were about to learn that there were some forces in the universe that couldn't be conquered through strength alone. The countdown timer on the main display showed 4 minutes and 37 seconds remaining.